Do people always recognize you? Does everybody always know who you are? Well, my dear, said Mr. Chesterton, if they don't, they ask. Mr. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday is a little like that. Roughly speaking, it's about anarchists. It was written, remember, in the boom of bomb-throwing in those radical, irresponsible days of the nihilists. And roughly speaking, it's a mystery story. It can be guaranteed that you will never guess the solution until you get to the end. It is even feared that you may not guess it then. You may never guess what The Man Who Was Thursday is about, but definitely, if you don't, you'll ask. I am Gabriel Syme. I am the man who was Thursday. That particular evening, if it is remembered for nothing else, will be remembered in that place for its strange sunset. It looked like the end of the world. It may be remembered by others, too, because it marked the first appearance in the place of the second poet of Saffron Park. For a long time, a red-haired revolutionary had reigned without a rival. It was upon the night of the sunset that I, Gabriel Syme, ended his solitude.
Mr. Syme, you say you are a poet of law. I say you are a contradiction in terms. An artist is identical with an anarchist.
Mr. Gregory, it is things going right that is poetical. Our digestions, for instance, going sacredly and silently right. The most poetical thing in the world is not being sick.
Really, Mr. Syme, the examples you choose...
I beg your pardon, Mr. Gregory. I forgot we had abolished all conventions.
You don't expect me to revolutionize society on this lawn?
Oh, no, I don't, but I suppose that if you were serious about your anarchism, that is exactly what you would do.
Don't you think, then, that I'm serious about my anarchism?
I beg your pardon.
Am I not serious about my anarchism?
I strolled away and left Gregory, but with surprise and with a curious pleasure, I found a red-headed young lady still in my company. It was Rosamond, Gregory's sister.
Mr. Syme, do the people who talk like you and my brother often mean what they say? Do you mean what you say now?
My dear Miss Gregory, when you say thank you for the salt, do you mean what you say? No. When you say the world is round, do you mean what you say? No, it's quite true, but you don't mean it.
Is he really an anarchist, then?
Only in that sense I speak of, or if you prefer it, in that nonsense.
He wouldn't really use bombs or that sort of thing.
Oh, good Lord, no. That has to be done anonymously. I strolled with her to a seat in the corner of the garden, and I defended respectability with violence and exaggeration. I grew passionate in my praise of tidiness and propriety. All the time there was a smell of lilac around me, and once I heard, very faintly in some distant street, a barrel organ begin to play, and it seemed to me that my heroic words were moving to a tiny tune from under or beyond the world. In the wild events which were to follow, this girl had no part at all. I never saw her again until all my tale was over. And yet, in some indescribable way, she kept recurring like a motive in music through all those mad adventures afterwards. And the glory of her strange hair ran like a red thread through those dark and ill-drawn tapestries of the night. For what followed was so improbable that it might well have been a dream. When I left the party and went out into the starlit street, I found Gregory waiting for me.
Mr. Syme.
Mr. Gregory.
This evening you succeeded in doing something rather remarkable. You did something to me that no man has ever succeeded in doing before. You irritated me.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
There is only one way by which that insult can be erased, and that way I choose. I am going at the possible sacrifice of my life and honor to prove to you that you were wrong in what you said.
In what I said?
You said I was not serious about being an anarchist. Mr. Syme, may I ask you to swear by whatever gods or saints your religion involves that you will not reveal what I am now going to tell you to any son of Adam, and especially not to the police? Will you swear that? If you will consent to burden your soul with a vow that you should never make and a knowledge you should never dream about, I will promise you in return...
You will promise me in return...
I will promise you a very entertaining evening.
Your offer is far too idiotic to be declined. You say that a poet is always an anarchist. I disagree, but I hope at least that he is always a sportsman. Permit me here and now to swear that as a Christian and to promise as a good comrade and a fellow artist that I will not report any of this, whatever it is, to the police. And now, what is it?
I think that we will take a cab.
A cab pulled up before a particularly dreary and greasy beer shop, we seated ourselves in a close and dim sort of bar parlor at a stained wooden table with one wooden leg.
Mr. Syme, if in a few moments this table begins to turn around a little, please don't put it down to the champagne. I don't wish you to do yourself an injustice.
Well, if I'm not drunk, I'm mad, but I trust I can behave like a gentleman in either situation. May I smoke?
Certainly. Try one of mine.
I took the cigar and started to light it almost before I had begun. The table at which we were sitting began to revolve, first slowly and then rapidly.
You mustn't mind it. It's a kind of screw.
Quite so, a kind of screw. How simple that is. The next moment, we two, with our chairs and tables, shot down through the floor as if the earth had swallowed us. Gregory led me down a low, vaulted passage, at the end of which was a heavy iron door.
Who is it? Mr. Joseph Chamberlain.
It was obviously some kind of passport. We stepped into a queer steel chamber whose walls were hung with dubious and dreadful shapes, things that looked like the bulbs of iron plants or the eggs of iron birds. They were bombs.
And now, my dear Mr. Syme, now we are quite cozy, so let us talk properly. You said you were quite certain I was not a serious anarchist. Does this place strike you as being serious?
It does seem to have a moral under all of its gaiety, but tell me, you have a heavy iron door. You cannot pass it without submitting to the humiliation of calling yourself Mr. Chamberlain. You surround yourself with steel instruments which make the place, if I may say so, more impressive than homelike. Why, after taking all this trouble to barricade yourself in the bowels of the earth, do you then parade your whole secret by talking anarchism to every silly woman in Saffron Park?
The answer's simple. When first I became one of the new anarchists, I tried all kinds of respectable disguises. But at last I went in despair to the president of the Central Anarchist Council, who is the greatest man in Europe.
Oh, what's his name?
You wouldn't know it. That is his greatness. He looked at me. You want a safe disguise, do you? I nodded. Why then, dress up as an anarchist, you fool. I took his advice and have never regretted it. I preached blood and murder to those women day and night, and by heaven they would let me wield their perambulators.
You took me in. What do you call this tremendous president of yours?
We call him Sunday. You see, there are 7 members of the Central Anarchist Council, and they're named after the days of the week. He is called Sunday by some of his admirers, Bloody Sunday. It's curious that you should mention the matter, because this very night we've called a meeting to elect a successor to the post of Thursday. And I don't mind telling you that it's almost a settled thing that I am to be Thursday.
Gregory, I gave you a promise before I came to this place. Would you give me, for my own safety, a little promise of the same kind?
Promise?
Yes, a promise. I swore before God that I would not tell your secret to the police. Will you swear by humanity or whatever beastly thing you believe in that you will not tell my secret to the anarchists?
Your secret? Have you got a secret?
Yes, I have a secret. Will you swear?
Yes, I will swear not to tell the anarchists anything you tell me. But look sharp. They'll be here in a couple of minutes.
Well, Gregory, I don't know how to tell you the truth more shortly than by saying that your expedient of dressing up as an aimless poet is not confined to you or your president. We've known the dodge for some time at Scotland Yard.
What do you say?
Yes, Gregory. I'm a police detective.
Mr. Joseph Chamberlain? Mr. Joseph Chamberlain.
It was repeated twice, and thrice, and then 30 times. And the crowd of Joseph Chamberlains, a solemn thought could be heard, trampling down the corridor. Here are your friends, Gregory.
Comrade Gregory, I suppose this man is the delegate?
The fact is, comrade, I have been specially sent here to see that you show a due observance of Sunday.
Well, comrade, I suppose we'd better give you a seat in the meeting.
Gregory, I could see, was in an agony of diplomacy.
Yes, I think it is time we began. The tug is waiting on the river. I move that Comrade Buttons take the chair. Second the motion! All those in favor? Aye! Carried. Comrade Buttons.
Comrades, we all lament the sad decease of the heroic worker who occupied the post of Thursday in the Central Council until last week. He organized the great dynamite coup of Brighton, which under happier circumstances ought to have killed everybody on the pier. Upon you tonight, comrades, it devolves to choose out of the company present the man who shall be called Thursday.